Gentlemen, good to see you guys again. Derek Lott, professional negotiator and author. Today, vulnerability is on my mind and on my heart. What you think about the topic?
Derek, as always, pleasure to be here. See you gentlemen again. Brian Boyd, software engineer and minister. Vulnerability, to jump to the topic, is a very, very interesting thing. I think that it's something that we don't, as men, like to talk about in society. Of course, we want to be the rock, so to speak. We want to be the person that other people can run to with their problems. But I think in that sense, we don't often show our own. So I think the vulnerability for me personally is being able to not only, be aware of my emotions, but also be able to deal with them and to be transparent with other people as I communicate them.
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned. AJ Oliver, your friendly neighborhood pharmacist. And vulnerability is a key thing for me because it's hard for me to be vulnerable to people, to random people. Usually it requires people to talk to me and bring something up that will require me to be vulnerable. I don't automatically become vulnerable. And so that is something, to be honest, something that I'm still working on and I have difficulty doing.
Yeah, how do you describe vulnerability when you think about the word as it relates to men? What do you see as vulnerability?
Well, Derek, to think about this, it reminds me of, it's this book called The Way of the Superior Man, right? And the second chapter is actually says, live with an open heart, even if it hurts. And basically what that's saying is that we'll go through things in life, right? We'll have situations, we'll have breakups, we'll have failures, and when those things happen to us, we're not supposed to close off. We're not supposed to internalize those feelings. We're not supposed to beat ourselves up over them, but we're supposed to live with the fact that those things happen, accept them for what they are, and then let them go, right? And I think even for that, using it as a personal example, in my career a while back, I got turned down for a promotion, right? I worked 2 years for this promotion. I was at the top. I worked like day, pretty much night too. We was on salary, so I was working pretty long hours, and I ended up getting turned down for the position because I didn't have the corporate experience to get in those positions. And what happened was I was devastated. And I think one of the things that happened in that stage is that not only did I withdraw from my job, but I also kind of withdraw from my family too, because I was so caught up with failure that I didn't spend time, with my siblings. I didn't spend time with my parents. I didn't spend time even with my closest friends. And I kind of stayed in that place for a little bit. And I didn't know how to voice my distress in this situation. I didn't know how to voice that feeling, me feeling like I failed not only them to an extent, but also myself because I didn't get that position.
That's deep. That's deep. I'm going to take it back for me, just going off of what you're saying. I believe it may have something to do with how I was raised. It may have something to do with just who I am as a person, but I consider myself a perfectionist, and that's not me bragging. That's actually a hindrance in a way, because whenever I fail and I did my best, there's times when I feel like that's not my best isn't good enough. And that has provided depression, that has provided anxiety, that's provided for me just self-doubt and not giving me grace. And that has carried to me like since my childhood. One example is I used to love basketball as a kid. I played basketball up until when I was in high school for sports teams, like for the school teams. And so when I got cut for the first time on my high school team, I never had like the root of depression. Like I went home and cried and was in my house like all night, I remember. And it was just something that like I couldn't understand, you know what I'm saying? Where you try your best, you feel like I went to all the basketball camps. I was cool. Like the coach knew my name on a first name basis. The best player on the team knew me. I used to run games with them all fall semester. And then when basketball trials came out, I still got cut. And it's just like, why God? Why me? Going further, like even with my residency, which I just completed last year, I was asking the residency director for a position there, and she told me that I wasn't cut out for it. Like it wasn't a place for me. And I thought I was considered one of the best residents. Like, I was putting in work, I was providing the best care to patients. I started a chronic care management clinic there, own business there for them to implement, and for them to not let me be working there, but let my co-resident who came in the same year I did, that was a slap on the back as well. But as I'm still learning, just looking back on these incidents, everything happens for a reason. And so I'm still working on it. And like I said earlier, vulnerability is very hard for me, but I'm still learning that everything happens for a reason. And sometimes what's considered failure is a way for you to get back up and be a success in a future occurrence or in a different environment. Failure could mean that it's a way for you to self-reflect. Failure could mean that maybe that environment that you're in isn't the best environment for you because God has a better spot for you in a different situation. So
I think about in my own life over the years, there's so many things that I've just I've hidden, I've placed in a chest. And for me, vulnerability is opening that chest and talking about the things that are in that chest that are very painful. Things related to jobs and work and other situations like that. But for me, probably my biggest vulnerability was being an overweight kid. I just remember so many instances where people made fun of me as a kid. And it wasn't, I was like, why are you guys bringing all that hate to me because of my size? And I never forget, 14, I started working out. Now think about that. I'm 55. I've never stopped working out for 41 years. And people come to me and they say, Derek, you're always working out. You're so motivated. I never want to be fat or overweight. I never want to be that kid again. I'm afraid of being that kid again. That's why I work out. That's why I go so hard. Not because I'm trying to be all buffed and look good for the ladies. I'm afraid of being that fat kid that got teased, that got poked fun at, that couldn't get stuff done. And I will tell you, my horror, I was at a reunion party. And I was slim, I was looking good, I had my suit on. And one of the guys said, "What's up, D? Hey, man, I'm good. You know D?" He was like, looked at me real close. Yeah, the fat kid. I mean, I was destroyed. And everybody was like, "What? D be working out?" "Nah, man, I know you. You was that fat kid. You was real big." And everybody was like looking, and I was shattered. But you want to talk about the chest? I never talked about those situations because I would have to be vulnerable. But see, if I had talked about those things and what I had been through and what I had to deal with, they'd have been like, "Oh yeah, we know about D, but that's why he got on his game now, and that's why he's cool with us." Because of his vulnerabilities, not because he's trying to be perfect. To your point about being a perfectionist, we aren't perfect, but we hide the stuff so we can try to look perfect. We get on social media and throw that nice little pic on there, and we're doing all the great things to look great, but it doesn't show our vulnerabilities. And and I know a lot of times our physical insecurities are a big vulnerability for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because I pretty much had a similar childhood story. I kid you not. Being the overweight kid, the inner city school. And on top of that, I was probably what I always called it a super nerd because I knew when I went in the show you, I was always at least 3 grade levels above the grade that I was in. But just because I had that intellectual gift, I work all the time on my work. I was always like a studying person. And that would be something that would always be on display if I would be in class. So I got picked on for being overweight, but I also got picked on because I had good grades. And, during that particular time, that wasn't the cool thing to be. It wasn't cool to be a nerd. It wasn't cool to be overweight. And that's something that stuck with me for years. And I think that's why I had grew up so introverted. And I think to an extent that may be why I'm still so introverted, because I can talk to you all like this and be extroverted. But for the most part, like in my personal life, I'm probably one of the most introverted people that you'll ever meet. But for me, you know, just hearing your story made me take that out the chest and want to talk about that. And I think that that's something that even as men, we don't really get a chance to just sit down, have conversations like this and talk about this, you know, because these are things that have helped us for so many years. And for you, that drove you to work out. And for me, it made me internalize it. So we had the same situation, but we dealt with it in different ways.
My childhood has provided a lot of scars, like, and it's just a lot of things that I've brought upon myself. One thing that I've had a hard time talking to people about was, and it's actually insecurity, is that I didn't go to public schools or charter schools or whatnot. I was actually homeschooled for most of my life. And I didn't like telling people that because it didn't allow me the capability to interact with other kids. It was always like me and my brothers and my mom like teaching us. And that was a big insecurity in and of itself because of what I just said. Like wasn't able to interact, and I felt like I was the odd kid out. So when I interact with other kids, you know, they're looking at me like I was the weird kid because I didn't know how to interact with other kids, or I acted a certain type of way that they weren't used to. And so, you know, they used to call me names like, "Oh man, you act like a crackhead," or why you dress like that? Like, why you wearing red shoes with green shorts and things like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, just not dressing right and things like that. Or I even had people call me, believe it or not, I used to be called like the white kid. Like, and that was a huge hit too, because, you know, you're looking at yourself like, I'm black. Like, why are you calling me white? But it's just because the way I was acting, you know, because of how my mom taught me and not how the school taught me. And so that was an insecurity I kept near and dear. I never told a lot of people that, but yeah, it really had trickled a lot down my whole life because of me not knowing experiences of growing up with kids in the neighborhood. Also being a military kid, I moved around a lot as well. So just not having friends that you grew up with, or not a lot of friends that you interacted with on a constant basis. So that was, that's a huge thing that carries with me to this day. But I see it as a blessing because once I go back to the root of me being homeschooled and just being able to remember the wisdom that my parents taught me, it really has carried me a long way, just looking back at it and not letting society dictate who I am.
Yeah. I mean, that was powerful what you said about being called white. Yeah. Wow. Being a black person and being called that, is extremely hurtful. It reminds me of, I talked about those physical insecurities, but there's one physical thing we don't get to change. There's one thing, no matter how hard you try, I'm going to be a black man till the day I die. Absolutely. And I'll never forget being at work and working really hard, and I had a white manager come to me and say, "Derek, why are you working so hard? Why are you here so late?" And I told him I can't afford to make a mistake. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "As a black man, I don't get but one chance." At least that's what I thought. I was working hard. I was working double time, triple time, overtime. I was everywhere I needed to be all the time because I was afraid as a black man, if I messed up, I was out. And he's like, "Why do you feel that way?" I said, "Well, I just look around and everybody that I see that's been fired was a black person. And they had a struggle because they didn't have the same, access. They didn't have the same leg up and network and all these different things, and they were gone. So I was working hard against the idea that no, I can keep up. I have what I didn't get in school, I make up for by working late and staying overtime and all those different things. But I was afraid that if I made a mistake, I was going to get fired. I wasn't going to have a job. I had to be doing twice as much as my white counterparts. And when I shared that with him, I mean, he was just, what? No. I was like, hey, I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. You asked me a question, I'm telling you. I fear for my job because I believe I have to work twice as hard and I only get one chance.
Ooh, and that's an extreme level of vulnerability, and I felt that too. And maybe that's a society thing with us specifically, because I feel like that sometimes we have to work that hard, and that may not even be to an extent like a society construct. I mean, yeah, the biases may exist, but at the same time, are they really that great? You know, is that something that maybe we did ourselves to an extent? We think that we have to work this hard, we have to achieve this level of success just so we don't end up, broke or homeless. I worked the late hours. I got there early in the morning. I was coming in work with full suits over there. Everybody else was coming in jeans and Skechers. Because I was trying to climb the ladder. I was trying to make sure that my position was secured. I wanted to make sure that I was the best person on the team, that I wouldn't be the last one hired and the first one fired, that I would have longevity wherever I went. But how much of that and how much of yourself do you lose in that is the thing. Because I know I can say personally, I lost a lot of myself, in my career over the years, trying to make sure that I could secure the stuff, not only for me, but for my family.
Yeah, so carrying work home. Now, that's something that I feel like as men, it's black men especially, working extra hard to prove yourself. Because I speak for myself. I work mostly in the Caucasian environment and in the pharmaceutical industry, where it requires a lot of head knowledge. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm smart. I know my stuff. But I do have to think a little hard. And when I try to personalize with different people with different ailments, and my heart wants to say one thing, but my mind is saying another thing. I can use logic to tell you what this medication does, but if someone comes up to me and say, hey, this medication isn't working, it won't make sense. But I sympathize with the person. So you have to find a different way to make sure that patient's comfortable. So it requires a lot, pretty much is what I'm getting at. And it sometimes triggers me to carry work home. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not going home and looking up stuff and doing work physically at home, which I do that sometimes. So that's something that I could work on as well. But I'm talking about the mental aspect and me trying to prove myself to people that I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I already got a PharmD. There's times where I feel like I have to keep proving that I deserve that PharmD, and it's a detriment, I realize, to my personal life, where that's all I think about is work. Even when I'm out with friends, I'm thinking about work. When I'm with my fiance, I'm thinking about work. When I'm going on vacation, I'm thinking about work. And then at some point, I have to give it up to God. I gotta bring it up. I give it up to God, and it just goes away. That's the only thing that helps, because society, you feel like society's doing this thing or thinking one thing or another. I mean, I'm a personal person, so I feel people's energy. So I take it on. Someone's feeling upset or sad, angry, whether it's at me or certain situations, I sympathize with them. And I feel like I have to reciprocate that energy. That negative energy comes to me, I want to give it back to them in a positive light. It's going to be okay. Here's a solution. That requires a lot of energy that I have to give. What is that negative energy that I have to do that's built up inside of me? I have to give it up to God, because if I hold on to it, it is not doing me good. It's not doing people who really care about me any good. And that's huge. That's huge. Still working on it. I'm blessed to know what to do to help with. It's just it's about action. It's about actually doing it, and it requires just to relax.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a takeaway from the conversation that we've had here, is that vulnerability is actually the solution. See, we talk about vulnerability, and I was raised, being the old cat in the crowd, I was raised to be tough. Don't never let them see you sweat. That's a deodorant commercial, by the way. But anyway, don't show weakness no matter what. But the reality is you're crying on the inside. When I was dealing with that young boy that was overweight, he's been screaming ever since, even today, right? Being that black man, working hard, trying to make it happen, needing something, but holding it all inside. We have to be vulnerable. As black men, and I'm sure this is people in general, but black men, you ask for some help. Ask for some help. We talked about accountability in one episode. Find somebody you could talk to, that you can be vulnerable. Hey, I have these feelings. I have these misgivings. I don't feel confident in these areas. I'm insecure about this. How did you mentorship? Right? Find people you can mentor with that can help you, because that vulnerability is the way out. Trying to be the tough guy and trying to hold it all in is what's going to keep us from getting to our full potential as black men, in my humble opinion.